Okay, listen, they've already discussed the idea of unionizing college athletes. They've talked about stipends that are already in place, little additional spending money for some of the guys who are making millions and millions of dollars for their colleges, guys and gals. Ben Himmelstein says that does not include uniforms, however, and that has been a big controversy. Will you explain, Ben Himmelstein from the Frutkin Law Firm, about the current case regarding college uniforms for sale?
Sure. Last year, there was a ruling last summer. It was called O'Bannon versus the NCAA.
Who was O'Bannon?
O'Bannon was a UCLA player, I believe, in the 90s.
Basketball.
Correct. And now he actually works for Toyota in their sales department. So he obviously didn't really go pro or have a successful career after college.
But he drives a nice car.
He drives a decent Toyota, I'd imagine. So, but basically the case was about the anti-competitive rules by the NCAA that say that players are not allowed to receive any compensation beyond their scholarship and the cost of attending school. So O'Bannon and a number of other former college players went and sued the NCAA asking if they could receive compensation for the appropriation of their name and likeness, basically used in video games and jerseys and things like that. And what the court eventually ruled is that those rules violate the Sherman Act and violate the antitrust laws, and that those rules are no longer enforceable. And so basically schools can now pay these players a little bit more money based off their appropriation of their name and likeness, but the schools actually have to hold this money in trust until after these players graduate. And the court didn't go so far as to rule that players could directly receive compensation based off doing commercials or things like that.
I've had guys here, football and basketball players, and they've told me stories that we don't hear about generally. Most of the time we hear about the fact that signing bonus after graduation, millions of dollars, and they're all wealthy. Except when they're in school, yeah, they get a scholarship, but sometimes they don't have enough money to go to Whataburger.
That's correct.
So is it fair, according to the book of Himmelstein, is it fair that your employer as such, the college, that has hired you as such for your services, makes millions off your skills, and you get zip?
My personal opinion is no, it's not fair. I think that there at least needs to be an increase for cost of living. And you know, it's not just college tuition that these players should be receiving. It's also that, hey, look, at the end of the day, these kids got to eat. And so it's not quite so fair that the school's receiving so much compensation from these sponsorships and from the TV rights, and these young players are really not getting much. And then, I think that the idea is that, well, the exchange is for their academic education, but in reality, they have to do double the work in order to survive. They're traveling around under high pressure. How are they supposed to actually really get a very solid education? There's a very small percentage of athletes that actually are capable of doing that. You see somebody like the player for the Cardinals that went back to school to the University of Phoenix to receive his master's degree, like Larry Fitzgerald. That's very rare and very commendable, I must say.
All right, but what have colleges done, because this is a continuing case?
Correct. So at this point, there's certain colleges across the nation, like Ohio State, have decided to only sell jerseys with the numbers 1 and 15 on.
Why? Why those numbers?
I had this discussion last night. We thought that it was because perhaps 1 and 15 are commonly used. However, what I've heard is actually 15 is for the year and 1 is for the rank of the school.
And University of Arizona is one of the schools is doing that.
Correct.
And so they decided to bear down and make available only the 1 and 15. Next year, 1 and 16.
I would presume.
But if you got a kicker that's really terrific and he's got number 1 on his jersey, he still can't get money.
Correct.
For the sale of that jersey. including jerseys that would have his picture on them.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, now, you know, the school can actually set up a trust fund for the players and pay them some compensation starting after July 2016. However, the NCAA actually appealed this ruling from the O'Bannon case, and it's still pending in front of the Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit.
Well, they failed in their efforts at unionizing.
Correct.
That would have been a disaster. I mean, can you imagine? Listen, we're holding out this coming school year. We're going to strike. We're going to do a sit-in, and we're not going to play ball unless you raise our salaries. That would have been crazy.
I think so, but I also think there probably would have been plenty of other players that stepped up to play.
Sure, but what's going to happen now? What's going to happen as the case is eventually going to be decided? Will athletes be paid for their jerseys?
I don't think that the athletes will end up being paid directly for their jerseys. I think, as it stands right now, the Court of Appeals may uphold this trust fund idea, where essentially the school is going to hold some money in trust and pay the players a stipend post-graduation or after they leave school for the use of their name and jersey. But I think they're going to, do it based on a percentage and not based on, sales per specific player.
You were an undergraduate, graduate at ASU. Who was the quarterback? Name a quarterback that was playing.
Jake Plummer.
Jake Plummer. Okay. I thought that's who you were going to name. And can you imagine, though, Jake Plummer getting paid for his jersey, but an offensive lineman, 305 pounds, getting bupkis?
That's right.
By the way, Getting Bupkis is a brand new movie coming out shortly. I'll be telling you about it with reviews on the Morning Scramble.